welcome back to the show. I'm Phil Vischer. This is Phil Vischer Podcast. We are here with Skye Jatani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Unshaven Skye. And who's this?
I'm Camerin.
Camerin Courtney.
Remember?
Do you remember Camerin Courtney? She's been here once or twice?
Once before.
Once before.
Only
You
once?
asked me back.
Really?
Thanks.
Once before?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're now an official friend of the show.
Oh, yay.
Because you've been here more than once.
Do I get like a t-shirt or something?
No.
Oh.
Well, she
But
hasn't
we're
made
gonna
it through
make
the second
t-shirts.
one yet.
We need to make t-shirts.
We've been
Friend.
saying that for 2 years.
We need to make t-shirts, and we are so gonna make t-shirts. So gonna. I just need to buy more fabric paints. It's just time.
Are you going to bedazzle them,
I'm gonna.
please? I would like
should
mine bedazzled.
Clinky Pete. I should bedazzle my uke. Okay, I need to do the theme song. I had a couple requests. Oh, someone requested I do the theme song as Pinky and the Brain.
Do you know who those are?
Yeah, I know who they are, but I don't. That doesn't. Just because they're characters doesn't mean I can do their voices.
Clearly. So, are you restricting these requested characters?
Voices I can do.
Well, how do they know you can't
Yeah,
do them?
totally.
You've done other
What do they- I know.
non-veggie,
What do they-
what's in the
I
Bible
don't remember what
characters.
Pinky and the Brain sound like. Do you remember what Pinky and the Brain sound like? Wasn't Pinky kind of like this? I'm gonna take over the world. Was he like that?
Yeah, but not.
No, I'm gonna take over the world.
No, that sounds like Stewie from.
Oh, that was Brain. That was Brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pinky. That's Stewie. Oh, Stewie. I could be Stewie.
You know that
I don't
today is
watch that
National
show
Talk
enough
Like a
'cause
Pirate
it's
Day.
evil. It is?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
What?
Nobody told me.
Yes.
Arrgh.
Well, and Scottish independence thing.
Oh,
happened,
yeah,
so
and,
we got.
and the Scots have decided to stay in the United Kingdom. I was so worried. I thought it was all going to
So I
fall
think you
apart
need to
over
do
there.
the Captain Pete.
In honor of Scottish non-independence and talk like a non-independent Scottish pirate day, as it is, I'm going to do it like Captain Pete. All right, thanks. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. Here we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So engineer, the Phil Vischer Podcast. That's right here. We'll talk to Skye and Camerin too, cause she's our guest right here for you. Maybe we'll be independent in another 100 years. Who knows? We try once a century. Thanks, William Wallace. Hey, it's a podcast. So engineer, the Phil Vischer Podcast. That's right here. The Phil Vischer Podcast. That's right here. Happy non-independence day. Thank you. Thank you. See, that's a more, even that was a more positive response than I've ever gotten from Skye.
I'm not surprised by this.
I know.
Sorry.
I've shared my feelings openly about Plinky Pete. What can I do?
Do you have feelings
Do you
towards
guys
Blinky
need to have
Pete?
a
I do.
moment here and work this out?
I'm annoyed with him. I want to
Okay.
go Animal House on him.
Camerin is a writer, journalist, blogger, used to be the editor of
Today's Christian
Woman magazine.
Yes.
So well steeped in women's issues.
Yes.
And you work for a rabbi.
Yes, I do.
So also well steeped in Jewish issues.
Yes.
Especially well steeped in women's Jewish issues? Or is there no real overlap?
I don't think there's an overlap.
Okay.
But you
Okay.
can try me with a Jewish women's issue, and I'll see what I can do.
And you still do movie reviews?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
When did that end?
A couple of years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
No more movie reviews from Camerin.
But you still go to movies.
I do a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, she likes movies.
Yeah.
But so I said, okay, Camerin, you're going to be on the show. Send in some stories. You want some stories. And this, she felt, was the most pressing,
That is not how I prefaced this
culturally
story.
vital story. There's a new app out that lets you atone from your smartphone, inspired by the book of Leviticus. Scapegoat lets users offload sins onto a virtual goat. So this was made, it's a Jewish app.
Yes, well, and they are releasing it now because, you know, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
When is Yom
when
Kippur?
It's
What's the day? Is it different every year?
Yes.
The Jewish calendar is a lunar
Yes.
calendar, so it
Yeah,
changes.
okay.
Next Friday is Rosh Hashanah.
Next
and
Friday, Rosh
then
Hashanah.
10 days later is Yom Kippur.
10 days later is Yom
And that's
Kippur.
the Day of Atonement. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they're...
Is that when they read the story of Jonah? Is that on Yom Kippur?
Is it a free app? Can I download it right
Sure,
now?
I should know
Okay.
that.
I kind of want to check it out.
So and the app is based on
What's it called?
From the book
Scapegoat.
Scapegoat.
And it's a little goat.
It's a cute little goat, and you type in your sins, and they attach them to the goat. And then you don't kill him, There's no goats.
I kept wanting him to like jump off the cliff. I think is
He's on a
there a way
cliff.
that he can?
I don't know if he can, but there's a cute little goat, and you put your sins on him, and then the community, then that's the idea, was the community put their sins symbolically onto a goat, and the goat was sent out into the wilderness.
I'm not typing well.
To carry the sins of the
Yes.
community away.
Yes.
Symbolically on Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah.
I don't know.
I'm not finding it.
The day of goat reckoning.
Right.
Let's see if it says.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jewish people everywhere.
As you prepare for Yom Kippur this year, you don't have to look much further than your iPhone for an opportunity to atone for your sins.
There's no e-scapegoat. How do you spell scapegoat?
The traditional way.
SCAPE.
I'm an editor.
Maybe it's Android only. I don't know.
It's not showing up on the iPhone.
Oh wait,
App
don't
Store.
look much farther than your iPhone. That's what it says. Well, how are we going to atone for our sins? So, but it said
There's also a website where all the sins like show up
and you can read other
on
people's
Twitter feed.
sins.
Really?
Yes.
That sounds.
I checked it out. My boss and I were like fascinated, and
That
we
feels
like
more Catholic.
yeah. Well, all the sins were really like
Silly sins.
tame.
Yeah.
And in the article too, it mentioned like
I bought a donut for my daughter, then ate it before she got home from school. There's another one. Judging others.
okay, that's a little more.
Here's another one. I pretend my phone is broken when I ignore calls.
Like if those are the worst sins that you have to atone for over the past year,
Well, but
then
those are probably, I mean, what's the worst sin that you are willing to share with an app on your phone?
Yeah.
I think that's more the issue.
yeah.
And
Okay, sure.
I cannot find it.
okay, well,
For the
It
life
does
of me.
exist.
I'm sure it does. I just have a lot I need to atone for right now, and I feel like
Well, you gotta hurry because
would
Yom
you think-
Kippur is
I
coming
know.
up.
would you feel better if your sins were attached to a cartoon goat,
a digital goat,
a digital goat,
digital sins, digital
going
goat.
into the
right?
digital wilderness?
Yeah, maybe you should just atone for all of your like digital, electronic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What?
Does it still count if it's a digital goat?
Well, okay. Well, I thought the article was interesting because it talked about like she's trying to acknowledge
She says
the biblical
people don't
literacy.
even know about this.
Yes,
and so
and
she's
that
trying to
this
teach the story
again.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's not actually an atoning app per se.
right. I think it's
an
kind
educational app
yeah.
about an atoning practice.
I think it's
that-
kind of trying to raise awareness
Yeah.
and biblical literacy in a
What would be the equivalent
slightly
for a
irreverent
Christian
way.
app?
for
Like we like a digital cross and we hang our sins on a cross,
maybe.
maybe?
Yeah.
Skye?
Huh?
You're not even, you're not.
Am I committing a digital sin right now?
Yeah, you're not with
I
us.
think
You're
you
not
need to
present.
find the goat and like.
I do.
think you need
I
to.
really should have done this earlier today.
But
Okay.
The thing is though, is like I think that there's that sense of. I just lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Exactly.
You were
I
asking
love
if there's
that sense.
a
Yeah.
Christian digital equivalent. Isn't
Yeah.
there? I think there's an app that's like a confession. booth.
Confessional. Is there?
I think there's a confessional.
But does it go anywhere? Does it go
should.
to a real priest?
It would be nice.
Yeah. I feel
I
sorry
do know
for
you
that
can
priest.
you can be ordained through an app.
Really?
I think a Tony
be
Jones
e-ordained?
Yeah, Tony Jones. You can pick what religion you want to be ordained in, and then
and then you're an e-pastor?
something like that.
I mean, I know you can get ordained on the internet, so
Is
I
that
guess it
legally
only
binding?
like.
Yeah, but it's like one of those University of Phoenix degrees. It doesn't really count.
Okay. The NFL.
The NFL.
The NFL.
They have some things to atone for.
The NFL is going from bad to worse. And because Camerin is female, we thought she might bring her own perspective.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry. We're guys. We were talking about the NFL.
Speak for yourself. I am too. I'm a guy.
Yeah.
I'm a guy.
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself.
Guy is a guy. So we started with Ray Rice, who punched his fiance unconscious.
Yeah.
That seems like it'd even be hard to do. Can you?
Well, she hit her head on the
really?
railing in the elevator. I think
okay.
that's may have
Because
also
in the movies,
contributed.
it's so easy to knock someone out. I could pick up this Star Trek mug and conk you on the forehead, and you would just be out.
True.
So
that's-
that I could escape.
right. That's just to move the plot forward.
Yeah, and then you'd wake up later and say, "Oh, where'd he go? Oh, I got hit with something." When your friends showed up looking for you, saying,
Right.
"What happened to the prisoner?" Then you'd wake up. That's how it
Right.
works in the movies. In real life, it's harder to knock someone
Well,
out.
and if you hit somebody hard enough to knock them out, you could also cause a
Damage.
cerebral hemorrhage, which can also lead to death. So it's,
that's not good
But
at
they always
all.
wake up in time for the friend to find them.
Yeah, and so then we got Adrian Peterson, was in and out and then in and now back out, and that seems to be going worse.
Because he had his son take a switch and they
right.
him with it.
But they reinstated him, and then Radisson canceled their support for the Vikings, and then other.
If they're looking for someone to support, the podcast is available.
Yeah, Radisson, we're here.
Yeah, we don't beat our children.
We're clean. We're clean. Our hands are. We put all our sins on an electronic goat, so we're absolutely clean. And now Arizona Cardinals running back Jonathan Dwyer, he's been suspended indefinitely because his wife rejected his advances, and he responded by headbutting her in the face and broke her nose.
I think that's what they do in New Zealand. Isn't that the Maori tradition?
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that's what...
They touch noses.
Isn't that what the female praying mantis does?
Okay, touching noses and headbutting are
touching
two very different things.
Touching noses is the affectionate way of doing
aggressive.
it. When they don't, like, you know, bam.
Aggressive nose touching.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Eskimos that kiss with their... No, they kiss with their eyelashes. Eskimo kisses? Aren't you...
No, those are...
Isn't that just in a
those
song?
are butterfly
fluttering
kisses.
Eskimos rub their noses together. Butterfly kisses, like the song.
Eskimos, where did they come
danced
from?
with Cinderella.
You know, if they kiss with their noses, they actually stick to each other because it's that cold.
Well, one of them has to be cold, and the other one has to be warm. If two cold things stick together, just touch, they don't stick because they're the same temperature.
It's like a physics lesson too.
Seriously,
the reason your tongue sticks to something cold is because it's wet.
Yeah, it's wet, and then it freezes.
And then you got ice tongue. But if there's two Eskimos, they both have ice tongue to start out with. So that's just like sticking two pieces of ice together, and they don't stick.
How do they make more Eskimos?
They don't. The ice stork brings them to Alaska.
And that's very enlightening.
And in addition to that, he then threw a shoe and hit his 18-month-old with the shoe.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So he's in.
He's got some anger management issues.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
And then, a lot of anger management.
You know, Jameis Winston?
No.
You know Jameis? Do you know who he is? Do you know who Jameis Winston is? Really? That's not ringing any bells? Okay, he won the Heisman last year.
Oh, no. Now I know he's in Florida. That guy. Yeah.
He won the Heisman.
I heard this.
Oh, sure.
I know. He's in Florida. I just didn't register the name, but I know he's talking.
Jameis Winston.
I don't know their names. I just know what they're known for.
Heisman winner, best basketball player, right?
No, it's a football award. I'm aware of that.
He also won the national championship. Florida won the national championship. He was the quarterback, and he was a freshman, I think, or a redshirt freshman, so he's really young. He's getting in trouble for all sorts of stuff. He's suspended for the next game.
Didn't he assault some woman and then didn't get prosecuted because they wanted him to be able to play?
There was some issues around an assault. Last summer, he stole crab legs from a supermarket.
Why? Was that like just a frat dare or something?
I don't know. And he had a charge for stealing something else. And now, last week or the week before, he stood up on the table in one of the student centers and yelled an obscenity, an obscene phrase.
Who hasn't?
I went to a Christian college. We didn't do things like that. Skye. I didn't go to the University of Ohio at Miami.
That's not what it was called.
University of Miami at Ohio.
Miami University.
Miami University at Ohio.
Just Miami University.
At Ohio.
No.
Well, what's the one in Florida?
Ohio.
How do you differentiate it from Florida?
Miami was a university before Florida was a state.
Yeah, I know, but what's the university? Isn't there a University of Miami?
There's a
sensitive
University of
about
Miami, and there's Miami University.
Oh. Well, that's not...
I went to Miami University.
Okay. And
in Oxford, Ohio.
Did you stand up on a table and yell obscenities at any point in your time?
My lawyers advised me not to answer questions that could incriminate me.
So this is the first thing he's actually been punished for, and he's
probably in his whole life.
He could be. He's suspended for one half of one game.
Seriously?
Yeah.
They can do that? Just a half of a game?
Yeah, a half a game.
Can they choose which half?
The first half.
If they're really ahead in the first half?
So he can come back and save the day, and then be even more of a hero and become even more of a jerk.
Great.
I imagine. Yeah.
Cameron, if you were in charge, what kind of punishment would you have given him?
For the stealing of the crab legs and the obscenity?
What if you stood on the table yelling obscenities and flinging crab legs, which are hard and kind of pointy?
Well, it depends on the
If they
crab.
were frozen.
Would that have been a whole game suspension, or would that be even more? Stolen crab legs, hot crab legs.
I think that there's a larger, clearly, issue here of
Cameron,
figuring out
what's going on,
what the morality we are expecting of our pro sports players.
Well, we talked about this last week. Is there a difference in the morality we expect from a pro sports player versus the morality we expect from a plumber?
Yeah.
I think both of them should be expected to not engage in criminal behavior.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
I think
so
that's
the
a
crab
pretty
leg
clear line.
stealing is out. And then the punching out of one's wife or significant other.
Or beating of children
Or
with
hitting it.
shoes or switches.
Or switches.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just a fact that our sports figures are role models, especially for
Yeah.
young children.
Right.
And
Were
when they're
you-
signing up for that, I don't know. And I'd be really curious to know, like, contractually, when you become an NFL player, is there something that
There's
says,
some kind
you know,
of morality clause.
Yes, because I've had different jobs, or like when I've published a Christian book, there was like a moral turpitude line in there. Like if I went off and like,
I
you know,
even have one of those with DreamWorks for doing VeggieTales voices. If Bob the Tomato goes off on a racist rant, I can be fired as Bob the Tomato.
Yeah.
If Bob the Tomato throws a shoe and hits an 18-month-old, he's out.
But you mean if you do that, not in his voice.
I'm not clear on that.
Like if
part.
you were to...
I don't think he understands the difference.
What do you
You said if Bob the Tomato goes off into some racist rant, you don't
Yeah,
mean
if
actually
they
ranting in the
animate-
voice of Bob the
If they
Tomato.
animate Bob the Tomato
No, I'm saying if you
beating
did
up
it in his
wife,
voice.
I get fired.
You know what
it's
I mean.
not just.
Just
Is this when Christian usually comes in and like says,
Yeah,
boys?
and she says,
Okay.
says, where is this going?
Where is this going?
I don't know. Where do you think it's going? What do you make? Were you around when Charles Barkley did his famous Nike commercial and said, "I am not a role model. I am not here to babysit your kids." This was in the Michael Jordan era when Charles
Vaguely, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, and it was a big news. It's like, whoa, he said he's right. He's not a role model. But it was stupid because you don't choose if you're a role model.
It's true.
You don't choose if people are going to look up to you. If kids look up to you, you're a role model. If anyone looks up to you, you're a role model. You can't just say, no, I'm not.
But can't you say
No,
you're
I'm
a
not.
role model in certain areas of life, not all of life?
But you can't control what people look up to you
so then why
for.
should you be responsible then for your behavior if you didn't choose to be in the limelight?
You didn't?
Because you're a human being and
How
there's a
did he
certain
not-
civility. I mean, they should at the very least be expected to like.
He wanted to play in
Act
the NBA. That put him
civilly.
in the limelight.
Yeah, but
And in our current culture, with people having cell phones, I mean, that was the whole thing about this. Is like, I don't think that any action would have been taken by the NFL if we hadn't all seen this.
oh yeah, that's clear.
So,
Right.
you know, with surveillance videos, with people with, you know, camera phones and stuff like that, I mean, they're not ever, I think, out of the spotlight. And so I think it's part of the culture now.
There's been so many stories over the years of professional athletes doing ridiculously inappropriate things. Not all of them criminal, just stupid things.
Yeah.
And does this now set a precedent where every time they transgress, the league is going to step in and go, you're out for half a game?
I think we could end up with only 2 teams left because
Yeah.
it's all the players they can scrape together. You know, it'll be Tim Tebow and the other homeschool kids. Those will be the only ones that can keep their noses clean. Were you homeschooled? Okay, you can play professional sports.
Right.
Which is the same. I mean, look at Disney. Disney tries to find all these young actresses to be in their shows.
And then they corrupt them.
Yeah, and they go flipping out, and that's like the Jonas Brothers were homeschool kids. So the Jonas Brothers actually stayed clean during their whole time involvement with Disney.
Isn't there some weird stuff going on with them now?
Now, but they're
That's because of Disney.
yeah, and they're in their 30s now. They're practically old. Disney can't even recognize them as people anymore. They're too old. But you can't find you want people that want to be stars, but people that want to be stars, especially kids that are being groomed to be stars, and that's whether you're a 9-year-old football player or a 9-year-old country singer, typically are being raised by parents who put a tremendous amount of value on stardom, who often aren't the parents that put a tremendous amount of value on personal integrity.
You clearly have not read Britney Spears' mother's book.
Mommy Dearest?
Something like that. It was put out by a Christian publisher.
Was it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That didn't turn out well.
No.
Or Miley Cyrus.
Or Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber.
Does he even have parents?
Do you know what he did 2 weeks ago?
What?
On the award show, he got booed. Did you hear about that?
No.
Justin Bieber came out on an award show to give an award. People started booing him.
It was a fashion award show,
It was a
right?
fashion award show. People
Wait, he
started-
was receiving a fashion
No,
award?
he was just
no.
a
He was a
presenter.
presenter. He came out to give an award.
I'm sorry, still, why would you pick Justin Bieber to give a fashion award?
Celebrity. I'm doing air quotes. Celebrity.
Okay.
You want celebrities. You want to be associated with celebrities because we worship celebrity. We love it. Everyone loves celebrity. That's
way more fashionable celebrities than Justin Bieber.
You would just want to. So it's Justin Bieber. He comes out. The audience starts booing him. So he starts taking his clothes off, and he literally strips all the way down to his boxer shorts on stage on live TV
as a way to punish them. Like, I don't understand.
And then says,
I think when he gets booed, his response is to take off his clothes to try to impress people with his physique.
And says, "Now what do you think?" And then I think walked off the stage
because they kept booing.
I don't know. If
that's so perplexing,
isn't it?
I just think it's fascinating that the way a celebrity responds to negative feedback is, "Oh, I guess I should take off my clothes," because that will make them happy.
It works for the Beyoncés and all those.
Well, they don't have any clothes when they come out in the first place.
They don't start out with clothes,
which is why they all cheer. Yay! Right. They're naked.
Right. So Justin Bieber was just confused. He just thought
he was playing strip
underwear
poker
equals approval. If I'm in my underwear like Miley Cyrus. Did you hear what Miley Cyrus did in Mexico?
What do you all week long? All week long, he's on TMZ and he's engaging in Nicki Minaj's posterior news.
Miley Cyrus is being investigated by the Mexican government because she was in Monterey and she did a concert. And she had someone use a Mexican flag to whip her wearing a prosthetic butt.
Why a prosthetic butt?
I don't know, because it was bigger.
Doesn't the Mexican government have bigger problems
You'd think so.
than Miley Cyrus?
So they're investigating her,
denigrating their flag.
See if she should ever be allowed to perform in Mexico again because she desecrated a Mexican flag by whipping a prosthetic butt with it.
I think we need a constitutional amendment against flag butting.
Are there any?
Can we just send her to Mexico?
I think we did, and they sent her back. Are there any celebrities? See, and I mean, NFL stars, come into it young. You get money, you get fame, you get girls, you get whatever you want. Especially if they've been highly recruited, since they're in freshmen in high school. In some of these cases, they're on watch lists. They're now on ESPN. They have like the top 100 prospects, from this year's high school players. So you could be on the cover of ESPN magazine or Sports Illustrated still in high school because you're so promising and the whole world is watching you. What does that do to people?
I don't know. Last year I was.
Are you changing the subject?
No, but I had
at the end.
This is the.
I don't know. No, let's talk.
No.
The
extent of my experience in the NFL was last year. I was.
Wait, when did you play in the NFL?
I didn't play in the NFL, but last year I spoke to the Tampa Bay.
The Heisman.
I spoke to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, that's right. You did.
And so I got to spend like a day with them, and
because they wanted an expert in. Tackling? Why did you speak to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I was invited as a pastor.
Chapel. It was for their chapel.
Yes, it was for their chapel.
Thank you.
And so I got to hang out, and one thing that struck me, which is so obvious, but it doesn't register until you're sitting there looking at them, is how young these guys are, right? They're all they're in their 20s for the most part, right? Except the coaching
early
staff.
20s, yeah.
And so I did my chapel time with them, and it was not like come in and inspire us to beat up. In this case, it was the St. Louis Rams, but because they do chapel the night before on Saturday night before Sunday morning, prep and game and all that. And they said, we don't get to go to church because we work on Sunday mornings, so we don't want you to come in and give us a rah-rah, go get them kind of sermon. We want you to teach us the Bible. We want a church kind of experience. So I did that. And then later in the evening, they said we gather for a voluntary Bible study where we just want to go deeper and anybody can come who wants to. And quite a few players came, and these were really thoughtful, polite, courteous, nice young men.
Big.
Some of them were huge, yeah. And I brought my son Isaac with me, and he's he's 9 and not very big, and it was just great. I mean, they were wonderful, but you just realize how young these guys are.
Right.
And sure, there's a spectrum between the maturity level of these players, but for the rotten apples in the bunch, the bad eggs, whatever you want to call them, there's a whole lot of great people who are part of the NFL.
Eggs also show up to your talk?
I don't know.
Or do you think it was mostly the good eggs?
Well, the ones I interacted with, I thought were
appeared
really
to be good.
And
eggs.
I feel bad because the other night they got a serious spanking by the
they did.
Atlanta
That's right.
Falcons.
So you know Sean Hannity? You know who Sean Hannity is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. He was talking about the Adrian Peterson thing a couple nights ago. And he was complaining because he thinks Adrian Peterson should be allowed to play football because he got spanked with a belt when he was a kid. Sean Hannity says, my dad whipped me with a belt. I didn't need psychotherapy for it. And then he went on
Time will tell.
In fact, he said, in fact, I deserved it. And then he went on to say, and he had a psychotherapist on the show who was saying, yeah, but.
Was he Middle
That's
Eastern?
your
Why did
psychotherapist
Yeah, that's
voice?
my impression of it. That's a psychotherapist who can't get a word in edgewise. Yeah, but.
Do yabba do.
Yeah, but. And then Sean Hannity went on and said, in fact, because he was getting a little worked up, which is how you get people to watch your TV show, which is what I need to do more of, apparently. He was getting a little worked up, and he said, in fact, my dad punched me in the face, and I deserved it.
How old was he?
When he was a kid. He didn't.
He wasn't like 17, 18, you know.
I know.
Because that makes it okay?
He was a kid.
No, but I don't know. It's different when you're as
Is
big.
there an age
When you're as
where
big
of
and as
appropriate
strong
punching
or
in the
stronger
face?
than your father, and he gets all up in your. And he's like,
Wait,
just saying.
I heard
do you need to tell us something about...
No, my dad never
Your
hit me.
son?
My dad
Okay.
never hit me.
Did you ever hit your dad?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
I've heard that there's been mixed opinions in the North versus the South on the Adrian Peterson thing,
Right.
and it shows how people feel about.
Corporal punishment.
Yeah.
They're red states for a reason.
And why is corporal punishment so dearly held by so many Christians? Do you think? Is it the spoil a rod or spare the rod, spoil the child verse? Is that it?
I think there has been a lot of parenting advice that's come from folks who are big fans of that.
Yeah. But we understand that rod is a metaphor for discipline. Like thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. It's like how you correct a sheep,
I think
right?
metaphors leave a lot more for interpretation, and I think
Yeah.
people are much more comfortable with things that are black and white.
Were you spanked as a child?
No.
Really? Never?
Ever?
I don't think so. I mean, and I remember
'Cause
I
you
did a
were
lot of
good,
babysitting,
or-
and my mom
or
told me,
because you
like,
were raised by hippies.
my parents were about as far from hippies as they could have been. They were like June and Ward Cleaver.
Okay.
But
And they didn't spank? Because that's not like, I think June and Ward Cleaver spanked.
I mean, not like over the knee, spank.
Oh, okay.
But like, if I
Just
was
like punch in the face?
right, exactly. And my mom always told me, like, because I did a lot of babysitting too, like willful disobedience, especially if it was the safety of the child. Like if a kid's getting ready to like run across the street, you've told them no,
Right.
there's a car coming, a little smack if it's gonna like,
Smack them back out of the street.
just something like that, just to like, hey, protect them from themselves.
Yeah.
But people
Yeah.
have different thoughts on that. So
Right.
I'm sure they probably did that with me growing up. But
And I think a lot of Christians feel kind of convicted about this because, at least in conservative Christianity, we resent the idea that, the government is going to tell me how to parent my kids. That's a big thing for conservative Christians. It's like, you're going to tell me I can't spank. You're going to tell me I can't homeschool. When you're going to tell me I have to teach them evolution, what's next? And then, so your initial kind of knee jerk is, he spanked his son, and they're like kicking him out of football. And then you actually read the details. It's like, that wasn't really a spanking. So, I'm sensing in the church, kind of in the conservative church, kind of the, whoa, I don't know which way to go. I don't know whether to argue for big government coming down on him for his parenting, or, let him parent.
I think the sound bites are getting a little ridiculous, and obviously physical corporal punishment can go way, way too far into abuse. On the other hand,
were you spanked as a child?
Yeah, not terribly, but
is there a separate Indian tradition of spanking? Was it your dad or your mom?
My mom.
Your mom, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Indian spanking.
No, it's usually the parent who's present who does the disciplining most. So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's not wait for your father.
No.
When your father hears about this,
No.
you're going to be in big trouble because he's going to take you out to the woodshed. Why is that? It was more of a southern tradition. Because we didn't have woodsheds in the north. There are no woodsheds in the suburbs, so that doesn't work.
Okay,
well, they're sheds. Maybe they just don't keep wood in them.
I think we would
Take you
agree,
back to the
however,
shed where we keep the lawnmower. Like, it doesn't sound as
And your
impressive.
there are
us.
plenty of ways to severely damage a child without ever laying a hand on them.
Really?
Emotionally, to scar.
Yeah.
Really, there are ways to really screw up a kid.
Right.
In horrible ways without ever physically touching them. So to think that if you just don't spank a child,
everything will be okay.
Your parenting is going to be non-abusive.
I don't think Miley Cyrus was spanked.
Well, not until
she's spanked by the Mexican flag now.
Well,
but if it was on
I
a
think Robin
prosthetic,
Thicke did
then
some.
It was maybe she was just trying to avoid being spanked. I'm wearing my prosthetic butt today in case my parents are mad at me. How many kids did that? You put like toilet paper in your pants if you thought you were going to get spanked?
Apparently you did.
You didn't all do that?
I remember seeing that in some sitcom when I was growing up. Was that like an episode of like the Brady Bunch or something?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I didn't spank on the Brady Bunch, did they?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Something of that
There
era.
wasn't much corporal punishment in primetime television. People just get killed in primetime television. They don't get spanked.
True.
That would be cruel.
True. And actually on primetime television anymore, the children kind of like run the families versus the parents. But
what do we do about the NFL?
Well, I think we're seeing how much the NFL, and I've also heard similar true for military, is just a bastion of a lot of unchecked anger and a lot of abuse, and it's been going on for years. And I think we're finally seeing how much that's happening, and I think that needs to be challenged.
And here's the thing, because male aggression makes the NFL work, and it makes the military work.
Right. It's like you understand it, but we also like. If we know that these are areas where we're encouraging anger, can we also discuss appropriate and inappropriate ways to deal with this? I mean, if you're in a place where you're fostering that, can you also responsibly put it in a healthy context?
Yeah, I remember hearing at one point about the military was having some issues as more genders were mixing or more ethnicities were mixing, that they needed to do sensitivity training, and it's just kind of the notion of sensitivity training for the military.
For people who are trained to kill.
Right. Yeah. It's a little bit of an oxymoron, because in up through World War II, we were trying to figure out how to desensitize soldiers so they were more willing to pull the trigger. Because there's a whole, there's a whole school of military psychology. Because in the Civil War, a huge percentage of people never fired their weapons. They would point them, but then they wouldn't pull the trigger because they were willing to die, but they were not willing to kill. They would and so they had to learn how to get people over that, so that you're willing to pull the trigger. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't fight. You just get killed. You have to be taught to kill. Being killed is fairly easy. It's like falling off a log. And so we spent like 100 years trying to figure out how to get soldiers to be able to act, immediately.
And that's why video games were invented.
And actually one of the...
Well, I think there is a lot in our culture that
was written on that was doing the same thing. That video games for kids was actually repeating the patterns that the military had learned to desensitize soldiers.
And now we use drones and put soldiers behind a screen and say...
And it's more like a video game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I was in a movie the other day, and the bad guy gets shot in the final scene, this bullet right through his head. You see a little bit of his brain splatter out the back. Yeah. And people in the audience clapped for this violence that was taken. No! Oh. The friend next to me and I, we were both we were both startled, and it was just... Coming? No, not really.
See that? And I have a hard time with... Quentin Tarantino films. He's a good writer, and his dialogue is great. But there's just this.
There's a lot else in our culture that's.
There's revelry in pain, and in cruelty.
And we see that in our movies and our music and so there's a lot that's fostering this. We're in this culture.
I'm no psychiatrist, but it doesn't seem like it's beneficial.
I find that the older I get, the more sensitive I am to all that stuff. Really? When I was a teenager or in my early 20s, no problem, I'll Tarantino, whatever. Yeah. I can't, I've tried multiple times to watch Breaking Bad. I have started, because everyone's like, it's the greatest television ever created, and I've tried, I think, 3 times to start season 1, and I get a couple episodes in, and I'm just like, I cannot do this.
The first couple of episodes are the worst.
Well, television has gotten really violent.
Can't do it. And then someone else recommends
shows that are really well written, and well acted, and very intriguing, but they throw a lot of gratuitous sex and a lot of super violence.
Someone recommended Dexter to me.
Oh, it's about a serial killer.
Yeah, the serial killer with a heart of gold. And I'm like, I just...
Well, and that's just it. We're not just having people being violent. We're also feeling sympathetic towards them. Right. They're being forced to be violent.
The fallen hero, kind of, the anti-hero.
Right. We love the
hero. We're all marinating in that. And then you put somebody in the military, or you put them in, pro sports. And it's
It's messed up.
Yeah.
And then who gets the short end of the stick? It's women and children.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Literally.
Oh. It might have been the long end of the stick,
right.
though.
Whatever.
All right. We have another story which is related to that. So we talked a few months ago. We talked about the issue of sexual assault on college campuses. Well, my brother Rob, who's the dean of the St. Thomas Law School, sent me a story because it showed up in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Why campuses can't talk about alcohol when it comes to sexual assault. And this is an interesting story, so I'm going to read some of it. While statistics show that alcohol and sex can be a dangerous combination, at least half of students involved in alleged sexual assaults were drinking at the time. Campus officials are reluctant to put the two in the same sentence. Preventing sexual assault is at the top of the agenda on many campuses, but the people in charge of keeping students safe feel they can't say much about alcohol, even though it is a common element in many incidents. In discussing the dangers of sexual assault, administrators fear that if they counsel students to drink less, young women who get drunk and are assaulted will be blamed and will blame themselves. They may not report the attacks to their colleges and not get the help they need. Darcy Folsom, Director of Sexual Violence Prevention and Advocacy at Connecticut College, says the first things we hear are what was she wearing and how much alcohol did she drink. But those are not causing a sexual assault to happen. The perpetrator is the problem here. So that's kind of been the storyline all along, is don't do anything that says it's the victim's fault.
Right.
It's the perpetrator's fault. A former college president discovered last month just how volatile it can be to relate alcohol and sexual assault. Stephen Trachtenberg, president emeritus of George Washington University, suggested as a guest on NPR that college women could protect themselves by drinking less. The remarks caused an immediate uproar on GW's campus and beyond. While we understand the desire to help women stay safe, this perspective puts the onus of stopping sexual assault on women, students at the School of Public Policy said. It also does not work. Mr. Trachtenberg says he was chastened by the negative reaction, but surprised that counseling sobriety could be so controversial. Someone who is drunk, he wrote in response to the students, is more vulnerable to attack. Here's where it gets even more interesting, though. For 15 years, the Department of Justice has run a grant program that serves as a major source of funds for colleges developing resources for sexual assault prevention. Campus efforts considered out of scope, in other words, don't go there, for the grants include programs that focus primarily on alcohol and substance abuse. Because anything that focuses on changing victim behavior is out of bounds for the program. So one woman...
That's the dumbest thing I've ever
Kathleen Bogle, thank you, Bill Cosby, learned that alcohol could be off limits when she tried to deliver a talk several years ago called Hooking Up Alcohol and Sexual Assault, Understanding the Connections and Reducing the Problem. It was for a meeting sponsored by the Justice Department's Office on Violence Against Women, and federal officials asked Ms. Bogle to remove the word alcohol from the title. Focusing on how much students drink, they said, leads to blaming victims. She said, I don't think you are doing young women any favors by saying we're not going to tell you that this happens and to be careful about it.
Cameron?
Yes.
So that's
There's
crazy.
so much to say.
There is a lot to say
about that.
So then they were interviewing students. One woman said, the cost of any form of self-policing, telling women not to walk alone in the dark, watch what you drink, watch what you wear, is that you live under a self-inflicted form of fear. You are living in this fear that drinking or letting yourself go is a bad thing. Her friend said, all of this sends the message that it's the responsibility of women not to get raped, she says, rather than the responsibility of everyone not to hurt other people.
Okay, well, I understand where some of that is coming from.
Yeah.
I think in the past, there's been more of a message of that, where there's been more victim blaming historically.
Right.
So the pendulum has...
And in some parts of the world.
Yes.
It's
and it
like,
still
well,
does. I mean...
There's no crime there because she was walking without a male escort.
Yeah.
Right.
Or still, in the wake of the whole Ray Rice thing, the biggest question everyone asks is, you know, why does she stay? You know, it's like, why does he hit? Like, let's look at...
He hits because he's a jerk. So why does she stay is a more complex...
Well, why does he hit, I think, isn't just about him being a jerk. I think it gets into some of those other issues that we talked about, the violence and everything. But anyway, in this situation, I think the pendulum has swung, you know, so far the other direction that we're afraid to put any responsibility. And I think that's also happening at the same time that there's culture of we're protecting children from any, consequences of their actions.
Right.
How many parents are going into their school and saying, you can't give Johnny an F,
Helicopter parents.
Right.
That's what we call them.
Exactly. And so there's a convergence of things, and it's like, God forbid you should, talk about the consequences of your actions. But hopefully surely the pendulum can swing back a little bit, and let's talk about the fact that, look, I take the Green Line on the train, on the L into Chicago.
Yeah.
If I take that, and it goes through some dicey neighborhoods to get to mine, which is fine.
And you like to wear a bathing suit into work on most days.
Exactly.
I don't know.
If I take that at 2 a.m. by myself, I'm making
Putting
some choices.
in harm's way.
They're going to make me a little more vulnerable. And there's a difference between saying that and saying then it would be my fault.
But you shouldn't have to live under fear.
Yeah,
but I think the fear doesn't. The fear is somehow some fear is healthy, and some fear is from our culture, and it's not from getting drunk is not some inalienable right that she's talking about. I should be able to get drunk and feel
with no consequences,
safe. And it's like the consequences.
If you're on the Green Line at 2 a.m. and you have got you're loaded up with tons of jewelry all over you.
Yeah.
And money falling out of your pockets.
And I'm dressed all provocatively, and I'm leaving my purse on the seat next to me open with money falling out of it.
And a big sign that says, I'm a pacifist, or whatever. And, some guy comes over and completely assaults you and steals everything. Whose fault is it? It is 100% that guy's fault.
Totally.
Right? But you are still an idiot.
Yes. Well, I've upped my chances of that happening to me.
And I think
through a choice I've made, and I think that you can say that, I think there's a both and. It's still completely his fault.
Your car's stolen. The insurance company comes and says, "Did you lock your car?" Say, "No, it was unlocked." "Where were your keys?" "Well, I leave them in the car. I always leave my keys in the car."
Yeah.
We don't really want to cover this because you
were irresponsible.
Were foolish. Oh, you're saying it's my fault? I'm the victim here. Are you saying it's my fault? No, technically someone stole your car, so it's not your fault, but you didn't prevent it. You didn't do anything to reduce the likelihood.
Actually happened to somebody who I will not name, but
Camerin?
He had a rental car.
No.
He had a rental car. And he went out with some friends, and they were all at a restaurant
drinking,
maybe.
So
and he had thrown his keys onto the table or at the bar somewhere, and they were there for multiple hours. And he later on that night, he's whatever. So I don't know if he was drinking or not, but he couldn't find his keys. Goes out to the lot, his car is gone. It's a rental car.
Yeah,
and he has to report to the rental company that somebody stole my car. And they're like, "Okay, this happens. We'll be right." Find out that he doesn't have the keys. Because if it was stolen without keys, then it would have been like, oh, it's a police report, no problem. But the fact that he was not responsible with the keys means he's somewhat culpable for the stealing of the car.
So being conscious of your surroundings is a form of responsibility. Would you go that far?
I think I would.
To say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But we're not allowed to say, this is such a touchy area.
I know.
How do we say, because even when I brought up, hey, this doesn't happen nearly as much on Christian campuses, primarily because there's no drinking. Mm-hmm. Then some people already get mad.
Well, I also understand why universities would want to shy away from this, because it's a careful message to parse. It takes some nuance, and large institutions aren't necessarily good at nuance, and so it's easier just to be like, we're not even going to go there at all, instead of really vetting people that you let come and discuss this. And so unfortunately we just don't address it at all, and then we're leaving our young people vulnerable.
At the end of the day, if the goal is protecting women,
yes, hopefully,
if that's the ultimate goal, then let me
needs
make
to
a parallel.
Stepping on a few toes.
For years and years, even when I was young, there was this whole thing about preventing teen pregnancy. And there were a lot of Christians who were saying the only message that we should be sending to young people is abstinence. Right. Abstinence is the only message. Right. And then there were pragmatists who said, yes, but the statistics show that most young adults and teenagers are not abstaining. Therefore, we also probably need to give them some practical guidance around safe sex, condom use, all that sort of. And there was this battle between the purists and the pragmatics. Same thing here. In an ideal world, yes, you should only have to talk to those who would be assailants and say, never, 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 this is wrong, and not have to do anything practical from the women's side about not drinking or things. But if the end goal is to reduce pregnancies, or if the end goal is to reduce assaults on women, then you have to be pragmatic about this. And that doesn't mean you're in any way taking away the culpability of the assailant. They're still 100% responsible for their terrible behavior.
It seems like you can be aware of the risks you are taking while still not being blamed for an outcome. You are not the perpetrator, but still you put yourself in a position where there was a higher likelihood of being perpetrated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perpetrated.
You've got 2 daughters. I've got 2 daughters. I'm going to tell them, don't drink like this, because these are the things that can happen. And even though I would...
So the end of this article, and this is interesting, because again, this is in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Carolyn Kitchens, a 2012 graduate of Duke University, who now writes about sexual assault as a senior research associate at the American Enterprise Institute. That was a mouthful. In a perfect world, women would be able to do whatever they want, she says, but the world isn't perfect. There are always evil people out there, people who want to take advantage of women. If they exist, we have to practice some common sense reduction. And then the article, the author of the article, closes by saying, it's too bad, she says, campuses aren't delivering that message. Yeah. So the article seems to kind of come down on the side of, we really should be talking about the connection between alcohol and sexual assault.
I just think that's ironic. Like when I was a student at a secular university, Miami University.
Yeah, right near Tallahassee.
Right. First week on campus, we were all corralled into the basement of our dorm and taught how to use condoms. I mean, that was like...
That's a relief.
It was
that an official?
It was an officially sanctioned, you have to know this as a freshman in college.
Or something terrible could happen.
But so
wasn't some, like,
so this is what I find, is in the secular liberal institutions,
why was it in the basement?
Yeah.
Because that was the room.
Like, was this a real
That
event?
was the common room that was big enough for all of us to be in there. But
we're going to the basement. That's where we keep the condoms. Okay.
My point is, in these secular liberal institutions, they want to be completely pragmatic about sex, but they want to be completely idealistic about sexual assault.
Right.
And it's like, okay, if you're forcing all of us to learn how to use a condom, even though, you know, there might be people who disagree with this, who think, no, that's abstinence only, but they're just, I don't get the hypocrisy on the part of these liberal secular institutions that want to have practical advice on one side, but completely idealistic on another.
I think it's. I mean, it could be, and this is kind of the Beyonce thing and the things that I keep talking about over and over again, that there's a strange aspect of women's liberation where it's, I want the freedom to dress and do whatever I want without consequences, without, you know, any putting myself in any danger. I want the rule of law to be so firm and practiced by everyone. You know, I want it to be a perfect world. I want, you know, it's the women that every year demonstrate topless in Central Park to protest that women aren't allowed to be topless wandering around America. You know, and the guys are just going, you know, like Beavis and Butthead.
As Andy has said, clothing is a gift to 99% of humanity.
Yeah, okay.
There's a whole lot that's being touted as empowerment for women that is I don't know, pretty ridiculous.
Have you seen Nicki Minaj's?
Oh gosh,
video?
do we? Come on, seriously?
TMZ again?
Well,
she needs to have like her own segment on our podcast now.
Well, she's new here. She did. She
I'm not new on the
here.
planet.
You're
I know who
new.
she is.
You just got here from space.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So the Anaconda video, that's the number one YouTube video of all time. It has now been viewed 170 million times. 170 million. It ends with her, you know, kind of giving a fake lap dance to a guy, and the guy reaches out and tries to touch her, and she slaps his hand away and stops and walks off indignantly. That is this whole thing. This whole thing is female empowerment means I should be able to do whatever. I should be able to act as provocatively as I want.
She still wants to be wanted.
Yes, I want you to want me. I just don't want you to touch me.
Right, and I want to have the say over whether I'm going to let you touch me or not.
And that's where,
and it should be that, but it's also not the enticing of
which is like, you want. It's, you know, like, hey, look, heroin. You want it? No, you want it? We don't understand how powerful sexuality is. Do it to your dog or your mom. What did you say?
With a dog? No, a dog treat. Oh. It's just fun to tease him.
What do you do with your mom? What's her dog treat? Cupcakes?
You know my mom.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to picture it. I don't know. I'm not sure whether it would be. I'm not going to speculate any further.
Probably smart.
So has empowerment like run off the rails?
Yes.
Have we lost our minds?
I think it's ridiculous.
Yes.
Have we lost our minds? What would Bill Cosby say about
You know what?
all of this? What do you think? If you had a connection with Bill Cosby
WWBC.
and he would say something,
You're losing the power when you're.
Dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
There you go.
all right, so what's your message? Okay, if you're talking to high school girls and guys, why are guys always the
Well, first of all, I hope on these college
bad
campuses,
guys?
I hope that they are also
every
speaking.
story? It's a guy who's being the aggressor, the perp. Why is the perp always
Well, that's
the guy?
partly biology.
But we also, I hope that these colleges and universities where they're, addressing sexual assault are talking to these men about like, stop doing that. No means no.
Well,
and
that seems to be all they're saying, though.
Yeah. And the focus of it right now is stopping your friends from doing something dangerous. If you see your friend taking a girl upstairs at the frat house,
I applaud
stop
that.
them, which is good. Yeah.
because I was out with some coworkers once.
Another reason this doesn't happen as much at Christian colleges is there are no frat houses. There are no sororities and fraternities, so there aren't those parties. It's another reason.
Well, there are those parties that happen
your
that
kids to
aren't
a
at a
Christian
frat
college?
house. So
Yeah.
he's the one guy here
are
at the
they-
table who did not go to a secular university. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of houses that aren't frat houses or sorority houses.
And
where
there's
they're-
bars
Not a
near the
Christian
campus.
campus.
And there's bars, yeah.
Not at Christian campuses. They don't have bars near them.
And people
There's
just drink
like
in their rooms.
A 10-mile radius where you can't have a bar
That's so
within a
not
Christian
true.
college. Didn't you know that?
No, they have their own issues.
What should I sing about?
Women's empowerment. And how it doesn't just come from their sexuality.
Hey, ladies, I'd like to give you power, but it doesn't mean you should take a shower on TV in front of me. 'Cause that's not what I'd like to see. If you want to be treated equally, don't make yourself a she camel in heat, as the prophets in the Old Testament would say.
Wow.
Thank you. Good night.
Greatest hits right there.
So confused.
Come back again. Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you.